violence and nuclear winter. Here I am, having been locked into that vault as a result of some good-natured ribbing. I now find myself the last reviewer on Earth. And all I can think about is why? Why? Why didn't they make the third Amazing Spider-Man movie? I was really looking forward to Shailene Woodley as MJ. Yeah. Still, with the human race gone and all, I can best serve it by reviewing every single comic book that's ever been made, so the next generation of hideous mutants will know which comic books merely sucked, DC, and which wasted our time with a bunch of pointless crossovers, Marvel. Well, time to get to it. Whoa! Broken. It's not fair! It's not fair! I look so much smarter with glasses on. Oh well. Pep Morgan? Oh right, all that massive radiation left over from the bombs dropping would be fatal to me. Oh well. Enjoy the show. Huh. Hi everyone, welcome back to Comic Book Issues. I'm your host, the Last Angry Geek. Hey, I hope you like my channel's new video introduction. It only took, what, 7, 8 years for me to start looking professional? What? What was that? Who's Kamandi? Well, I'm glad you asked.
Worst segue ever.
No, technically I once saw a Segway with only one wheel.
One of Jack the King Kirby's most famous DC creations, second only perhaps to the New Gods, was Kamandi, the last boy on Earth. Kirby took the post-apocalyptic setting of Planet of the Apes and combined it with an earlier concept called Kamandi of the Caves. Thus, we're introduced to Kamandi, the sole surviving human being on an Earth now populated with mutated animal men. We learned a great disaster would occur in the DC universe, leading to Kamandi's alternate future, but he was otherwise absent from DC continuity save ties to Kirby's other book, OMAC. Having survived in Command Bunker D, the last boy on Earth, Kamandi is now joined by Dr. Canis and Tufton, heir prince to the Tiger Kingdom in his travels, hoping to one day restore the human race.
There have been many attempts to revive Kamandi at DC over the years. He had a small role in Grant Morrison's Final Crisis, and was even one of the strips included in DC's Wednesday Comics, which, some of you may remember, was the very first comic book I reviewed here on Comic Book Issues. Don't bother watching that for any review of the Kamandi strip. I was pretty much making a commentary on the product itself at that time. Hey, I was still young. I was still learning my craft. Who are you to judge? But now Kamandi is back in the Kamandi Challenge.
The idea being that DC is going to celebrate Jack Kirby's 100th birthday by publishing a round-robin sort of story. Each book will end on a cliffhanger. The next creative team will then have an issue to wrap up the cliffhanger, moving the story along, and then end on a cliffhanger of their own. So what happens when the creative team of the current issue screws over the next team with an impossible-to-solve cliffhanger? Well, that can't happen because each issue will feature a letter from the previous writer about how they intended to solve the cliffhanger they left off with. So each cliffhanger is planned with a logical and satisfying resolution, although not necessarily the one the following team will come up with. This series will go on 12 issues, and with talent involved like this, there's no telling how the Kamandi Challenge might end.
Unlike the Last Angry Geek Challenge, where you try and watch 12 episodes in a row. It can't be done! The humor is so forced! Call back. Anyway, the very first issue decided to spell out the challenge for you, since it involves 2 creative teams, so you can get a cliffhanger and its resolution by the next creative team right away. That way you know what you're in for with this series. Written by Dan DiDio, and drawn by Keith Giffen, with the second half written and drawn by Dan Abnett and Dale Eaglesham. This is the Kamandi Challenge, Issue 1.
Issue 1 opens on a small cottage. A young boy's late for school, but Grandma doubts they'll start without him. Rushing through the city, he's stopped from crossing against a red light. The cops are here to make sure he's safe. It's just then a chunk of sky falls in, and a spaceship arrives, blasting everything in sight. Masked, hooved strangers rappel in looking for the boy. Suddenly, the NRA comes to the rescue as everyone in town appears to be armed with a laser gun. The city erupts into violence. The boy runs home, but gets blasted by one of the invaders, who turns out to be a giant rat. He's saved by a grocer, who in turn gets shot in the face, revealing he's a robot. The boy realizes his entire life is a lie.
Coming to you live from a geodesic dome, the world's only reality show where the poor dumb schmuck doesn't realize he's being filmed. The Heinz Show.
In case I don't see you again, good afternoon.
Has been canceled due to a lack of interest.
He gets back home to Grandma Iris. She's comforting, but the time has come. There's an interdimensional portal in her living room. His parents foresaw the day when he might have to leave. They promise to leave a trail for him. Together, they can save the world. After the boy goes to the portal, Grandma self-destructs, destroying the dome and its invaders. Passing through, he sees and hears many strange things, the last being, "Remember Kamandi." As he mutters it, he's yanked to his feet. So his name is Kamandi. A tiger man throws him into a cart. He'll work the arena. He's to face Urklo, the undefeated champion. Thrown into the arena, Kamandi realizes his time just might be up. Urklo is a giant gorilla. The second half of the book, written by Dan Abnett and drawn by Dale Eaglesham, opens with Kamandi about to be eaten by Urklo. He squeezes the mutant's eye and is dropped to the ground. His tenacity and luck mildly impress Prince Tufton, heir to the Tiger Kingdom. He tries to escape, but the walls are electrified. He pulls a Luke Skywalker and throws a skull to get Urklo's attention. The monster runs into the wall and eats 1.21 gigawatts of electricity. With their champion down, the crowd chants for their new hero, the animal. What kind of hero is that? He's got a full head of hair, his tongue isn't green, and I don't remember him once eating his own turnbuckle. There's only one, the animal. Tufton recognizes Kamandi's intelligence and has him brought to his scientific advisor, Dr. Canis. Canis is unsure how Kamandi can be so smart, and how is he mimicking speech so well? Why does he carry books? But Tufton rationalizes it all away. The creature is a savage animal, and he wants Canis to train it for gladiatorial combat. Alone, Canis is shocked that Kamandi can clearly understand him. He wants to know where he came from, but Kamandi's past life now seems like a dream to him. He wants to leave to find his parents, but Canis leads him out on a leash. The world outside Tiger City is extremely dangerous. They pass a giant statue of Caesar, Tufton's father, who's away leading another military campaign. Tufton wants Kamandi trained. If he were to defeat Caesar's champion, it would give the young prince a huge boost in status and reputation. The boy recognizes a symbol on the Hall of War, but is brought to heel by Canis. They see Tufton drilling his corps of soldiers as the city begins to surge towards the gate. King Caesar has returned. Having crushed the leopard people, he brings them out in chains. Best of all, he has recovered the sacred warhead. Now all he has to do is find a huge pit to dump it in, maybe put up some cheap housing, make it vault adjacent, hire Ron Perlman to do some radio ads. But you gotta watch out for those Children of Adam nuts. They can be a real bore. And bore? Bore never changes. Really, 2 Fallout gags in the same review? Kamandi's teachings have taught him to recognize just how dangerous a nuclear weapon is. He breaks free and rushes to the Hall of War for answers. The Tiger Nation is stockpiling pre-disaster weapons. The hall is protected by the jackdaws, flying birdmen. He fights them off, eventually commandeering one to fly him to safety, but they crash to the floor, and he's put in a headlock by Canis, who scares off the jackdaws. If he causes trouble, it's Canis who will pay the price. He takes him back to the ceremony. Caesar is about to awaken the sleeping god. The king proclaims that once awake, the warhead god will share its power with the Tiger Nation. Kamandi watches in horror as the king activates the warhead. They have less than 5 minutes before the bomb explodes. And that's issue 1 of the Kamandi Challenge. Now, if you're wondering about the cliffhanger in the middle of the first issue, according to Dan DiDio, Kamandi would try to bond with the giant over, in DiDio's words, metonymic communication. This is why the DCNU failed. Failing that, he'd get Urklo to throw him into the stands where he'd meet and form a bond with Prince Tufton. Not quite the zip of seeing a giant ape get electrocuted, I know. But that's the basic concept of the Kamandi Challenge. So is this first issue a commanding success? Or is it too much of a challenge to expect readers to stick with it? Let's take a closer look at issue 1. The opening half of issue 1 does feel a bit rushed at times. Kamandi gives us a view of life in the bunker, as it were, with a nice nod to his creator, Jack the King Kirby. Then Kamandi jumps through Deus Ex Machina to enter the outside world. I wouldn't have minded if DiDio took the opportunity to let us explore the outside world a bit before taking us to the gladiator arena. Keith Giffen, himself a good writer, draws this half of the issue. But I had a hard time understanding what was going on in the page showing the dome being breached. Is that some creature or a larger ship disengaging the pod that attacks the city? Giffen never was good with textures, so it's hard to tell. Also, Keith doesn't draw the boys particularly boyish. He's so square-jawed that he looks like he's easily in his late teens. I'd always assumed Kamandi to be around 14 to 16. Also, since a long-haired Kamandi is pulled out of the chamber, how much of that first half actually happened or was all in his mind? Was the dome invasion staged to wake him up in case of the command bunker being breached? And will we ever find out? Is there a broad storyline in place for this series, or is everything being left in the hands of the subsequent creative team? I would assume the latter. Speaking of which, Dale Eaglesham also draws a pretty buffed-out young adult Kamandi, but you have to wonder if he's taking his cues from Giffen's interpretation. Eaglesham has always excelled at drawing organic things. I've reviewed his art previously in Villains United and Sinestro, so it's no surprise that he's good at drawing this rundown apocalyptic world now inhabited by mutants and animal men, everything overgrown with vegetation. And the second half of the story is far more interesting than the first, as we learn about this new world the boy finds himself in. Dan Abnett uses his half of an issue to do some necessary world building, introducing us to Tiger City and its animal men, supporting characters Dr. Canis, Prince Tufton, and King Caesar, new creatures like the jackdaws, and concepts like the Tiger Nation hoarding abandoned military supplies. Also, the pace of the second half of the story isn't nearly so breakneck. Like Kamandi, we get a chance to sit down and enjoy it all, but there's still not much sense of where the story's going nor an antagonist for Kamandi, but I'm interested enough that I want to take the ride. As for what comes next, future creative teams will include Superman writer Peter Tomasi and comics legend Neil Adams, Harley Quinn's Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Conner, and even Fables creator Bill Willingham with Green Lantern artist Ivan Reis. I really enjoyed this opening issue. Of course, with a new creative team, it's going to come a new interpretation of the characters each time. There's no telling where the Kamandi Challenge can go, and if each issue will be consistently good. I give the Kamandi Challenge issue 1 3.5 out of 5 stars. The price of the first issue is a little steep, but it does drop $1 with issue 2. I think if you just want to relax, enjoy this not too serious apocalypse story, you're going to have a good time. And knowing every time my show ends, my viewers breathe a huge sigh of relief, this is Comic Book Issues, and I'm your host, the Last Angry Geek.